Yo, yo, check. What's up, everybody? Welcome to We're back. Good to be back on this rainy Saturday. It is storming here, pouring rain. Not a very good day outside, but luckily we got a nice space for a nice podcast. Big episode today, episode 27. 27 episodes, that's crazy. Big guest, former colleague, I guess you could say. We went to high school together, Emma Pfitzer Price. She went to New York, studied at Juilliard, studied theater, acting. Super dope, super big show. Lots to discuss. First things first, my email list. I think I might have talked about this last week, but I'm having some trouble. Some people are getting the emails, and then some people aren't. There's something going on with my server, so I'm working on that. But I've been sending emails, again, as some of them, people have been getting them, but some people haven't. So I'm going to keep working on that, figuring that out. There was something else really important that I wanted to say. Should have written it down. Oh, I'm going to Florida next week. My birthday is next Friday. Spending some time with some good friends down there in Boca Raton. So that's going to be nice. Be a nice, break from reality, break from the podcast, break from making music and delivering packages. It'll be nice. We'll be down there for about 6 days. We leave on Monday. It's going to be super nice. Excited for the sun. All that. But, yeah, so other than that, that's pretty much it. But, yeah, so Emma and I went to high school together at YPAS. She was in theater. I was in band. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for that. We got a lot of good discussion planned. So, other than that, I'm trying to think if there's any other small announcements. Oh, Jack Harlow's on SNL tonight. I know that he's hosting, so that'll be cool. I'm trying to watch that. I think that's it. I'll go ahead and get Emma in here. Let's give her a ring. Hey, Emma.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Welcome to Lush Louisville. Amazing to have you. Yes. How are you today?
I am so good. There is not one cloud in the sky. It's
Really?
60-something degrees. My dog is peacefully sleeping on the sofa, and it's going to be a great Saturday.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on your way to a great Saturday. Can't ask for that.
Yeah.
Well, it is pouring rain here and storming.
No.
I know.
Still had a tornado?
But, no, well, we did the other night. Remember me and you were talking on the phone, there was like the power went out, and then it was a tornado warning, I think, but there never was. And then yesterday was super nice, and then today it's just storming. So,
Thanks.
But hey, we got a great podcast, a great episode, so can't complain. So, Emma, I kind of gave everybody just a little bit of rundown of who you are and what you do, but kind of give us just a little bit of, a background on, I guess, who you are and what you do, but your background in Louisville and kind of where you came from, things like that.
Sure. So I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia, which is like this really small town in Appalachia, where like everyone is, either from a family of doctors or a family of coal miners, or you're like a hippie bluegrass musician activist, and that's how you wound up there.
Huh.
And so I grew up there for the first 7 years of my life, and then my family moved to Louisville, which was sort of like the middle distance between Huntington and St. Louis, where my mom's side of the family is from. So we would always, as a kid, we would drive through Louisville, and just like drive through the downtown area. And I remember as a kid just being like, wow, like, what is this concrete jungle of,
what are these
like,
skyscrapers?
What is this? Yeah. And, now that I have some friends in towns that are smaller, deeper in Appalachia, they're like, oh no, Huntington is like, that is a big town. So it's
Yeah.
funny how that perspective sort of changes. But yeah, I moved to Louisville when I was, yes, I was 7 or 8, and still just kind of had this like boundless imagination, even though I didn't have as much nature around me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I kind of forced my neighborhood friends to play games with me and like create imaginary worlds. And okay, you
Oh,
have this
absolutely.
superpower, and I'm going to be an airbender. And, Avatar The Last Airbender was very big
Oh yeah,
during
I
that
remember.
time.
I remember. Oh yeah,
Favorite show. Still my favorite show,
it's a great show.
hands down. Um, but yeah, and honestly, that was kind of the start when I think about how I got into theater and performing. The roots of that really lie in those childhood imaginative games
Mm-hmm.
where you don't care
Yes,
about the
Starsky.
neighbors watching you from their window. Like, you are fully in your element and pretending to be someone that is impossible to be in the world that we live in. Um, and so as a kid, I definitely pulled, my little sister and all my neighborhood friends into these imaginary places and worlds we'd create together.
Right.
Um, and that feels like, the kind of where that creative journey began.
Started where it first started. Well, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing that you say that because, as a kid, literally what you said. You don't care who's watching. You're outside, doing your thing and creating all these magical, imaginary worlds. I used to do the same thing. Really, we had all my neighbors. We would have wars and Nerf guns and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
all different, and even just like playing football and just different stuff like that. So that's kind of where you kind of found those roots. You were saying in theater, I guess. So then from there, when did you get into like actual like theater or acting or things like that?
Yeah, so one of the first things my family kind of got me into when we moved to Kentucky was I was obsessed with figure skaters. Like, I would
Nice.
watch, I think we had just seen the Olympics or something, and
Yeah.
um, I was like obsessed with this skater named Yamaguchi, and I was like, I want to be that. And so they signed me up for these figure skating lessons, and I got really into it, and so did my little sister, and we started doing competitions. So this was all throughout like elementary school and middle school, and so I did competitions in Ohio and Kentucky, and I think one was in Tennessee, but just sort of like our neighboring states. And I like got really into like, the energy and like the performative aspect of it, and the outfits and the dance and the
Yeah.
sport. Like, I'm a pretty athletic person, and so it kind of married this. You get to pick your song and like come up with a character and the choreography, and I got on so well with my coaches. And then there came this one day I started doing, then, from that I was like, oh, I love performing. And so my parents put me in classes at Walden. So
Yeah.
at that point I was like, or I did that alongside most of the time. So I was 9 or 10 when I started at Walden. Um, and I got so into the classes there that I sort of stopped. I was doing the competitions, but I think my heart was really in the community I had at Walden, because I found figure skating to be sort of isolating unless you were doing like synchronized skating, because it's just you, your coach, and like the song that you're creating choreography to. And so I always found it isolating. But at Walden, I had this community and network of artists who were like weird like me, and I could just play those imaginative games. I had a little more space to do that. That's all we did at Walden, and like channeling that kind of creative energy. And so one day I think I did like poorly in a competition or something, and then I got to the point where if I wanted to get more serious about competing, I would have to come in and practice at like 6 a.m. like before, I was in 7th or 8th grade at this time.
Yeah.
And so my coach sat down with me and she was like, honestly, Emma, I just want to say, I think you're more into the performative aspect of this sport than you are into like the athletic essence of it. And I was like, I think you're right. And after that, never went to figure skating again and just fully invested in Walden. And then I had a babysitter who went to YPAS, and that's where I first heard about that.
Okay.
And so I applied when I was in 8th grade, like thinking it was a long shot. And I was in a Catholic middle school, so all my friends were going to Assumption or Sacred Heart. And so I felt like kind of the odd fish that was like, I want to go to a magnet high school and do drama. And I got in, and I ended up going to Emmanuel YPAS, and it was such an excellent high school. Because like we were talking about, you could kind of marry that love for academics, and you could take all these great AP classes and be surrounded by students who challenge you and engage you.
Yeah, that's true.
And I loved that in combination with having that theater focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, Emmanuel definitely had a love for academics. I'll say that much. Going back a little bit, what you were saying about when you made the decision kind of to take on drama fully and kind of leave ice or figure skating behind. That's nice though that your coach sat you down like that and was able to help you realize that. That's a sign of a good coach.
Yeah, and a great mentor. She just saw that something that I didn't see or like want to acknowledge because I felt guilty about it or whatever, but she saw through that and was like, go.
Yeah, do your thing, Emma.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're at YPAS, and you obviously you're seeing the environment that it is, and like you said, that's true. How being around individuals, I think when Chris Mikos was on here, we talked about this, being around so many creative people, and like they're challenging you all the time, and it's so competitive with the different departments that they had and stuff like that. What's I guess you kind of, but what was that all like? What did that do, and how did that help you grow as an artist?
I think the constantly being busy and balancing. I was also working a job. I was working at like Baskin Robbins.
Oh yeah.
For, I think 2 years of going to school there, and so balancing that with Walden, which was after high school, like the school day would end at like 2:20, and then we'd all carpool and go to Walden, which started at 4 and would end at like 8 o'clock because you have your 2 hours of classes, then you have a dinner break, and then 2 hours of rehearsal, and then the school day was half. I loved those like AP classes and the really challenging academics, and then you had your theater classes where you're changing your clothes, you're sweating, you're getting into it, you're in the studios. And so I think that at that time there was no time to breathe. And for whatever reason, I find that really stimulating, because you don't have any time to like doubt yourself or take a step back. Like you have to just, no matter if you're sleep deprived, vitamin C deficient, like you're young and you're going.
Yeah.
And then you're surrounded, all of your friends are doing the same thing.
It's like you don't have time. You don't have time to think. You're just doing it.
Yeah, you just do. You're just like this ball of activity.
Yeah, all the time. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. I was playing basketball for 3.5 years, and then doing on top of that YPAS, and then the academics, and it was just like, oh my gosh! But it was fun. It was definitely a blast.
Yeah, and it makes you like an adaptable and flexible person.
The mental capacity for like stress that I learned, I can take on a whole lot more now, and it's just that's just how it is,
Right.
But yeah, that's being sleep deprived and like that, especially around finals time in high school, was definitely
hungry.
Definitely,
I did not eat
forgetting to eat was definitely a thing. And so let's talk a little bit more about Walden. And so you had the school day at Manual, and then you go to Walden. So you had actual classes at Walden. You weren't just fully rehearsing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
so the first 2 hours we would come, and this was, I guess this started happening, when I first joined Walden, it was just called, the level you were in was called like improv. So you were doing a lot of games, and all those kids are like 9 through 12. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you're usually around the same time, you're like seventh, eighth grade going into high school. And I don't know what the level's called now, but you sort of became this journeyman of sorts, and you got more into the muck, and you started doing like a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of digging into heightened language,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking scene study classes with Charlie, taking voice classes with Emily or Hallie, and movement and clowning with Juilliard. And so you kind of had all these um, different classes that like reached different parts of your artistry. And then when you were in high school, you also got cast in more shows.
Yeah.
Or that was my experience, was when that started picking up. Um, and so you're kind of taking everything you're learning from those classes and then directly applying it to the rehearsal you're going to have later that night. And so if we were doing, like, my third year of high school, we did a Chekhov play. We did Three Sisters. So all of our scene study classes with Charlie were just Chekhov, like reading all of his plays, working on Uncle Vanya, working on Cherry Orchard, and talking about like that specific style. Um, and then we do the same thing with Shakespeare in the springtime. We always did the Shakespeare Festival around Shakespeare's birthday. And so we like really, the spring was just always infused with iambic pentameter and like
I remember learning
the
about that.
historical references and
Mm-hmm.
all that good stuff. But I definitely viewed Walden, like when I think about the most important lessons I learned there and what I take away with me today, was the classical training and working and investigating heightened language, and then activating it in the body. When at YPAS, my experience was more like, what is the art I want to create? Who am I as an artist in the world? Devised work. In our fourth year of high school, we did this awesome thing called Solo Mios, where we had 10 minutes to just do something. Like,
I
it was
remember
just
them. Yeah.
your time.
I remember
Yeah.
seeing those. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so much fun. It was like a lot of pressure at the time, but it was important to do before we all went off to college, especially as a lot of us were going to theater schools or art schools, just to figure out for yourself, like, what do I want to say? What is my message? How do I put this together, and share it, and for it to be engaging and activated? Um, so yeah, they were very different. Of course, there were a lot of people who shared those communities, like who would do YPAS, and then we'd all carpool together to go to
Mm-hmm.
Walden. Like, there was a huge network of us who balanced both. But I think we all, reap different benefits from both. I'm so glad I didn't do just one or just the other.
Yeah, it sounds like the balance from like the more classical to you as like how you want to be as an artist, the different
Yeah,
training. I'm sure that helped immensely.
yeah. And I think something that stuck with me is, high school was only 4 years, but Walden was, if I ended that when I was 18 or 19, that was 10 years of my life that
Mm,
I like
yeah.
created a network and a community in this school. And I still talk to my teachers from there. I'm still engaged with them, um, because I was there for so long. It really feels like, if you think about just the pure hours spent with that community, it's like more hours than I spent with my own family. Like,
Yeah, well,
it's really intense. It's like this
mm-hmm,
second home.
definitely. Um, your solo Mio, didn't you take everybody outside and do like
Yeah.
hopscotch? Okay, I remember that. Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember
I
if that
made
was you or
everyone.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was fun.
mine was like, it was, thinking about it, it was like a little mean to the audience because I like blasted music and I was like, everyone get up, we're gonna go outside. But during those 10 minutes, I investigated and wrote a poem about that time when I was a kid growing up playing games like hopscotch or things outside with my friends and creating worlds, and that's sort of what that was harkening back to.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that with the hopscotch and that's super cool. So
Yeah.
y'all only had 10 minutes because I remember seeing some of those, and so you only had 10 minutes to kind of express yourself. And
Yeah,
then, yeah, I
and
guess you could say.
yeah, and I remember at the beginning we were all like, "What do you do? You're telling me I have to stand there for 10 minutes and like
Yeah.
do something? Like where do I begin?"
Right.
And a lot of us had,
Well, that's
we all
probably
had
part of the
different
challenge, you know.
yeah. And I think one person in our ensemble was assigned to be our director, and the other person was like a stage manager or played some other, or like designer or played some other role. So I had a director for my piece, but then I was like Drew's director for his. And so we all kind of took turn. We had like a little support group. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just you and your
Yeah.
like thoughts, but
Yeah. Cool.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's taking a walk down memory lane here. Because we had in the band at YPAS, we had, I mean, countless. We had to do. I'm trying to give from my senior year. Oh, so like we all had the opportunity to audition to do a senior feature, and which is like basically a solo that you get to perform with the band at one of our concerts your senior year. So that was big. That was a thing, and then of course we had to audition for like all state. Being in the all
Yeah.
state, all county, and stuff like that. And yeah, that really takes me back. But so you have gotten an immense training in high school, and you're growing as an artist, and I'm sure it was overwhelming at the end of high school. Really, it was just like, wow, all this is coming to an end.
Yeah.
But then, Emma, you went on to New York and you studied at Juilliard, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was probably, when I got to college after being at Manual, it was like, wow, this is super easy. Like I'm the workload, I'm prepared for it. I know all this. Like I told you, my music theory class, the AP class in senior year was harder than AP theory 1 and 2 in college. But you're at Juilliard now. Tell us about that and what that was really like, just being there. Like,
Yeah.
what was that like?
I'll share that application process too.
Yeah, for sure.
It was so like
I cannot even imagine.
Really this like very last minute decision. I didn't know where I wanted to go to college. Really, I cast a huge net, like an overwhelmingly large net, because I was like, I'm afraid I'm not going to get in anywhere, so I need to like apply to as many schools as humanly possible, which was a mistake in some cases.
But that's a common,
yeah.
Going to college is stressful. But anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
And I feel like, that was just my nervous reaction, was like, I have to cover all my bases.
Yeah.
And so I applied to different kinds of schools, like big schools, small schools. A school I was like really into was Tulane University in New Orleans, because I love that city and my dad is an alum of that school, and they offered like a nice scholarship. So for a while I was like pretty dead set in my heart of going there and studying architecture and then minoring in theater, or like finding a way to double major.
Yeah.
And the fact that like that was, a potential possibility of what I would have graduated into, it's just would have led to a completely different,
it's a totally different world. Yeah.
And so sort of after I had gotten my main applications in, I remember I was at Quill's coffee shop, which was my little like in between high school and in between Walden hub, where I'd get like a frilly latte and like think about life, and do the Common App. I just kind of as like a whim, I looked at Juilliard's website and I saw their application fee was like, however much just to turn in the Common App or just to turn in an essay.
I'm sure,
And I
yeah.
remember calling my dad and I was like, is this worth it? Like this is like a great school. I would love to go here, but it's such a long shot. Like, is it worth, do you think it's worth
Oh,
going for?
yeah.
And my dad said something like really, if he hadn't have said this wouldn't have happened probably. He was like, why would you not? Like,
Yeah.
that is the best place to get, you want to be an actor? That is like the place you can go to get the best training in America. Like, why would you not? Just like, do it.
Yeah.
Just pay the fee and do it. Like, what do you have
Just
to
do it.
lose?
Yep.
Yeah.
Facts.
And so I applied right there. I hung up and I was like, okay, cool. And I applied, and I think coming from Kentucky or talking to like our artistic group about that school, we all had ideas about what it was. I thought it was like this prestigious, elitist, I thought it was like in Iowa in like a cornfield, and it was this perfect glass building of like impossibly like coiffed artists and their violins. Like I just had very like messed up notions about what that school was.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the name and because of the weight that it carries behind it. And then I auditioned in Chicago, and it was the best audition experience I've ever had in my life. And I was auditioning for like a ton of other schools.
Yeah.
But I auditioned for Richard Feldman and other faculty members. And what happened in that room was so magical, and I felt like they saw me as a complete and whole artist and not just a monologue package, or not just like this overeager high school kid coming in and doing like two different contrasting monologues. Like, when I got called back that day, they saw that I like to write on my application somewhere, and they were like, oh, could you share, it says you did this slam poem competition, could you share that poem, that one of the poems you did in this? And I just sat there with them and I shared this like slam poem that I wrote for Lipstick Wars, which was this slam poem competition that happened in Louisville. And like, I just felt so seen and heard by these people that my ideas of what that school was just out the roof. And then I came to the callback weekend where I spent 2 days here in New York at the school taking classes, meeting the professors, and I think there were like 50 of us that got called back to that weekend. And then 2 days later, I was having a day at school, and I thought about skipping school because I was so devastated. I was like, I've just met the most beautiful, artistic network that I've ever been exposed to in my life, and I'm not going to get into the school. And like, my life is over. I'm so sad that I just had this like magical, impossible weekend and did the work that like I want to do and I'm hungry to do for the next 4 years. And then as I was in this like depths of despair, Kathy Hood called me on the phone and said that I had gotten into the school. And I just like, I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. And from that point on, I was like, after walking around that school and being a part of the callback weekend, there was no other option. I was like, financially, I'm going to do whatever means necessary to make this happen. And to go here, because I've never felt so tied to a place. And it challenged all notions that I had, all of those like, oh, this isn't for a girl from Kentucky, this isn't for me, this is an impossible thing.
Yeah.
It was just the most humble and grounded artists that I was so excited to grow with for 4 years.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. And
Yeah.
didn't you said you were in Chicago auditioning for multiple schools? Didn't the theater program, didn't you all take a trip to
Yes.
Chicago to do that? Because I remember like talking to like Addie and Hallie and everybody. They was saying that they were like all nervous about going to do that.
Yeah. They put us up in this hotel. It's called Unifieds, and you just like it's all set up in this hotel room and all the business rooms, and you're surrounded by like high schoolers like stretching in the hallways and doing like vocal whatever, and you're like, oh Jesus, like
Yeah.
I just want to go to college, and I just want to like study the art that I'm passionate about. And
Understandable.
yeah, but it's
Understandable.
a stressful, you
Facts.
know.
Yeah, it is.
So walking into that room, I just felt so calm and at ease. Um, and yeah, and those 4 years there were incredibly challenging and beautiful and chaotic. And I think my biggest worry when I went there was, I wanted to go to a very kind of continue that love for academics I fostered at Manual. And I was like, if I'm just studying theater for 4 years, is that going to get lost? Like, how am I going to hold myself accountable for the academic education I want to receive? But then, you're put in a class with, my class was 18 people, half MFA. So they were, they had done undergrad. Most of them spent a few years in the workforce or doing something completely different and then had auditioned for the school. And then the other half of the class was undergrad, but we all took classes together. Um, and so my classmates and the plays we worked on and the dramaturgy we did for each of those projects, that was my education. And it like sounds wild, but you're sitting there, you're doing table work for a play, and then you're reading this like, oh God, I don't know Roman history. I don't know what I'm doing. But then there's someone across the table from me who's like, yeah, I studied that in undergrad, and I took this history class, and like, let me fill you in on what I know. And so all those gaps are like my feeling inadequate because I wasn't as old as half my classmates or as experienced. Like all of that insecurity kind of got taken care of because my classmates were so like humble and willing to use their educational resources as like, helping and lifting me up and my younger classmates up instead of like holding it over me or making me feel like inadequate.
Yeah.
Um, and we worked on so many different kinds of plays that were like very physical and bodily and ensemble driven, and then plays that were extremely heady where you're talking for 2 pages and you're like, how do I inform this so that I can engage an audience? Like I need to know what I'm talking about so that I
Yeah.
can carry my audience with me. And yeah, so all of that different exposure was like the education, exactly the kind of education I wanted to receive. I ended up getting that just through the worlds we were diving into.
That's amazing. So that was, yeah, I can't even imagine. So now you're there and you're fully immersed and you're doing how many like shows did you actually do there?
Oh, so every 6 weeks we had a different play project, or we call them like sharings. So it was like, or like a rehearsal showing.
Yeah.
So for the first 2 years, we wouldn't invite like outside folks unless it was family or like really close friends. But it was meant to be very private and, because you want it to be about the work. And so we didn't have any like costumes or sets. We were just doing them in the same studios we were rehearsing in, and then creating something out of like virtually nothing. And how does that challenge your imagination to, I'm sweeping and I need to have a broom. So how do I like,
How do you do
it
that?
would be like, I need to book a studio for 30 minutes during my lunch break because I need to look in the mirror and like practice miming a
A
broom
broom.
so it looks realistic and so I can embody it and imagine what that feels like in my hands and the corners of dirt I'm missing. Like, that was a lot of that time. And then third and fourth year, you use all of that kind of like the specificity work and the imaginative work. And then in those years, you're marrying it with the technique that you're learning. So you take Alexander class, which is about alignment. I know a lot of musicians study that too. And it's a huge core of Juilliard, is like aligning yourself so you can neutralize and take on a character and fully embody it from a neutralized place.
Huh.
And able, like vocally, like when you're aligned in Alexander, you're vocally capable to do whatever you need to do because your instrument is completely open. And then technique, like our voice work and breathing work. And we took first and second year took a lot of wild, like core, with Daryl's class, Daryl Quinton, we did this like workout cardio class for an hour and a half every other day. And just like pure, sweating buckets, like just like whipping your body into shape.
Yeah.
So that you are able, if you have to play Caliban and you're crawling on the ground and you have to like jump up and swing on things, like you're like, yeah, I got it. I am confident that my body can take on that kind of a character. And so, yeah, so third and fourth year was I found to be a marriage of technique and technical skill that you were fostering those first years, and then your imagination, your creative process, your approach to a character, that same imagination that when you're a kid and you're playing games and you just like no other care in the world, you were just present and you are on it and you're with your partner, and you're fully immersed in every detail of this world you've created together. And so third and fourth year, you get the hair, you get the wigs, you get the makeup, the costumes, like in the pictures I sent you.
Yeah.
Like, you get help in kind of filling out that world because you're trusted now that you could create it without all that extra stuff that audiences expect when they sit down and watch a show.
Right.
And thankfully, we got to do our fourth year rep before the COVID shutdown. And so we did that rep. So my class did 3 different plays. And then we had 2 weeks for spring break. And by the time we came back, our school was shut down and we could not access the studios anymore. And New York was, silent. So it was a really interesting, it's like, one of those moments in life where like you can't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
Because none of us got to really say goodbye to that building or to that, we did our showcase over Zoom just like this. Like I would talk to you like my scene partner, and that was incredible, like that we got to make that happen. And we did a virtual graduation. But as far as like hugging my classmates they have seen me at my very best and my very worst for 4 years. Like it's, it just had this very brisk ending.
Yeah. Abrupt for sure.
Yeah.
Man. Well, I want to go back for a second. What you were saying about the class you were taking about, you did the core and cardio workouts in.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely understated the classes like that, or the training you have to have as an actor to do things like that. Like you were saying, like if you had to crawl around on the ground, that's really interesting. Things like that. I'm sure those classes go a long way, and you get fit, So.
Yeah. And it's it's like, being an actor is so beautiful because you're studying, it's the study of like humanity. And so how do you, that school was all about, or my experience there was like, I am bringing 110% of myself to everything I'm doing here. And there's no other option. If I bring 60% of myself, like I can't be Caliban. I can't be there. I can't hold my ensemble members and like lift them up if I'm not there. And so as much as it's about self-discovery, you have to bring yourself in and just work with. A big lesson for me there was working from where I'm at, instead of like, if I come in and I'm like, oh, sleepy, like this is hard, I can't do it today, instead of putting a mask on and being like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get through it. I'm happy to be here. Like, how do you work with that? Like, I'm tired. I'm at my wit's end, but I'm going to be present with you, and I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to be here for you, and that energy of like, of that, of grace, really.
Yeah.
That was a huge learning curve for me, those 4 years.
So
That,
did you
yeah.
find yourself doing that like often? Maybe not often, but having to put that mask on like that?
Yeah, I think, and maybe that's something I developed in high school, that like we were talking about, like, that just get through it, just put the mask on, get through it. But it's this really subtle difference, and like, and because your teachers, they see you so intimately for 4 years, they know when you're not yourself or when something is
Yeah,
going on. They
that's
know,
true.
like, whether you like it or not, they will corner you and be like, I see you're going through something.
Yeah.
And you're like, ah!
They know, they know.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like this really subtle alteration of like, instead of putting something over that energy, I'm going to acknowledge that's happening, but I'm going to put it into the work I'm doing. So if I'm playing Masha and Three Sisters and I'm having an awful day, how do I take that like mood and kind of infuse it into Masha, who's, pining for, she's just like, just get me to Moscow. Like, let me be with Rashina and Rucker. So how do you infuse, how does like what you are going through as a person, how can you infuse that into the character that you're meeting, or that you're transforming yourself into?
Facts.
Yeah. So it's like from the difference from high school was it's more just like let's get through it, but now you're actually putting it into your work and using it to your advantage, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. So yeah, so then uh, you didn't really get a graduation. COVID kind of screwed everything up. Say that for everybody, that's just how it was. Um, and you talked to me about how New York had like totally changed when you came back from spring break. And first of all, I'm sorry that you didn't get a graduation. That especially at that, you didn't get to hug your friends and say goodbye. That's really rough. But just how did New York change? I mean, as vast and big as New York is with COVID, I can't even imagine. Just talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
And we had come back from like we had just had our spring break, and my boyfriend and I were in Greece, and he was also in my class at Juilliard, and had just like, the plan was, we come back, we have mainly industry classes, and then we fly off to LA to do our showcase. And so we the the vacation felt like this, relax completely so that we can come back and
Ready
like
to go, yeah.
get to work, ready to like jump into the industry. But we came back, and the thing that we studied for 4 years to do is the first thing to shut down. It's like Broadway houses and theaters closed. And we were getting emails from the school while we were in Greece saying we're going to go to virtual classes. And I'll say like that school did an incredible job with making like Zoom classes, especially for us as fourth years, like helpful and relevant, because we adapted our showcase to be on Zoom, and I felt like it was helpful for industry folks to see us on like a screen, because a lot of those industry members are looking, they're agents and managers and trying to envision us like in a self tape that they're going to send to casting directors for film and TV, and that's just the way our work is turning as these self tapes.
Right.
And so it ended up being this really helpful thing. So we had, we came back and there were things to do. Um, but when you walked outside around New York, it was this really, I'm thinking about it because it was this time last year, and it was this odd juxtaposition of like spring blooming and like that time when the year is usually really hopeful and it's starting to bud and
Yeah.
blossom.
Yeah.
And then you walk around and it's just like desolate. There's no one. Um, Everything I love about New York is the collision and the diversity and the bodies in space, running into people that like you haven't seen in 2 years, but you run into a corner, like you see them at a stoplight, and no other place in the world, like it feels like that kind of thing happens. Or just even just as much as I complained about it at the time, getting onto a subway car and being jammed up against different bodies, but you're looking around and you're like, not one person in this car is the same as me, or comes from the same, looks like me, or comes from the same experience as me. And so all the things, all of that that I loved the most about the city was stripped away because of the pandemic. And so I think a lot of artists during that time here in New York got A, depressed, and then B, felt this pressure to like do something, like put
Yeah.
something into, we're always sharing. And it was really odd for all of us to not have a community in our art, or just feel like totally isolated and at home. When I was used to like, you walk into school and there's your ensemble and you're all like half naked with each other and rolling on the studio floor, like that's my New York and that's my art. Um, and so a lot of it, that time just felt in the city where it's very difficult to feel isolated.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredibly isolating time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
But
But
from that, you got to like think about what is the work I want to do. There was way more highlight on like the individual as opposed to me and my ensemble. It was like, oh, I have to graduate from my ensemble, and how do I like carry these people with me because they define so much of who I am, just like I do for them. But what is like what is the work I want to do, and what can I envision myself doing in the next 5 years? What are my goals, my personal goals? How do I get there? And then all of our work was like doing self tapes and be like mastering the art of the self tape, where you have a reader, but you get a script, you get an audition, you have to memorize it in 24 to 48 hours,
jeez.
record it, and like be your own director, um, and then send it off to your management, who sends it off to casting. And so perfecting that and getting comfortable with that art. um, I call it art because it's just like so. It's it was a huge learning curve for me after coming from the theater, where, like I said, you have 6 weeks to like investigate a script and to create a character. Now, all of a sudden, the past year, my work has been, you get an audition, okay, clock's ticking. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
With how much can you change yourself and like jump into this world? But you have to do like all of that specificity you worked on at Juilliard, all of that technique and that imagination. It's all the same, but you have to infuse it in a shorter amount of time. um, and so yeah, a lot, as isolating as this time has been, it's also been like, learning what that is for me, um, and taking my own time and process with it.
And you're living in New York now, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been here, um, the whole time,
Wow.
for better or for worse.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you
Yeah.
now, you're able to focus a little more on the individual, like you were saying, and now you're not in school. What are you working on currently, like
So
project creative
currently,
wise?
yeah, there's the tapes, which is like, that's my work. But then they come and go. There's like weeks where there might be like a tape I need to crank out every single day, or an audition I need to do, or like a meeting or a callback. And so there can be weeks where like every day is infused with that. And then there's weeks where like you might not have anything. And so how do you fill that time? How, like we were talking about, how do you hold yourself accountable
Yes.
to like still being a creator and an art maker? And now it's like on you. It's like, I don't have to do this when you're auditioning. It's someone else's vision that you're like on board with and you're game to meet. But when there's no auditions on the horizon, or when it's just me and my time, this has been a huge lesson in accountability and holding myself responsible for like, Emma, you're also a writer. Hi, like there's the writer part of you wants to come out, and Emma, you also love to sketch. Like, hi, I'm still here. I'd still love to like practice that. And so I think just and this is something I've known about myself for a long time, but I can acknowledge I'm good at planting seeds of things and fostering beginnings and getting excited about like something new and change. And like, that is where I rest really easily, and where I find the most joy in the process is the beginning, and that spark and that meeting moment where you have this idea and it's your own, and you're planning out how to see it through, and you're like, I got this. And then, life happens, or like I'm working at a Montessori school, which is my full-time job. That's a time commitment. Then the auditions, that's a time commitment. And you make up excuses for yourself, or you get distracted. And so there's a lot of things I started when I was at Juilliard, because I think it was easy to start a lot of those extra processes, because I was in a school surrounded by people performing at that 110%, and so you never want to get lazy or like not see something through.
Yeah, you can't afford to get lazy.
Yeah, and so I took this awesome creative writing class, and I started a manuscript. And it's this like creative nonfiction piece, this long narrative poem kind of, and like a collection of these poems. But they read sort of like short stories, and I called it Unbridled. And I really tweaked away at it my third year of school. And that winter and that summer, I sent it off to a lot of writing contests, but it was never finished. Like, it was something I got jazzed by, and still I'm like, I was reading it before this call, since we talked about it the other day, and it was like, this is just something I need to finish this. And then like, I can't jump myself. Like, I need to really put the time and the work into it before I share it with the world. And then there's some art projects like this. I told you I was making this sketch of my sister that I'm going to paint. And that my time at school, I would always do like paintings for friends, or like commission work. So for my friend Jalen's birthday, he sent me this photo of like me and our two other classmates just flat out asleep on the subway train. And he was like, I want you to paint this for me. And so I painted it in oil and gave it to him for his birthday. Like, those kind of things I love to do, but for whatever reason, I just like really struggle with seeing them through if I'm not being held accountable. But then I can't expect other people to hold me accountable. I have to do that for myself, especially in this time.
Yeah. That's a big concept, really, is holding yourself accountable. And I think any creative would say that it's super easy to get excited about and like see and feel that initial spark of starting something and then finishing it. It's almost like you're your own worst enemy in a way. It's like just trying to bring everything together. Like if I was making a song or working on a song, it's amazing to start it and you've got all these different people giving you input and stuff, but finishing it is like when do you like even know? It's just part of it's part of the process, the whole creative process. But do your unbridled manuscript you were telling us about, do you have like are you close to being finished with it, or how is that? What's the battle with that like, or have you just not looked into it more?
It's so yeah, I was reading it before this, and I nailed down this like issue with it is it's all of the stories are beginnings, and so I've sort of strung them together as like it's a bunch of these narrative poems strung together, but they don't, there's no beginning, middle, ending yet. It's like beautiful and narrative and true to my life, and is this like nice memoir of sorts, but it doesn't have like beginning, middle, ending. And that is the essential, like you need that in order to have a story that people want to read and engage with.
Absolutely.
So I think as I work on it, just coming up with like, yeah, I have these descriptions and this like sweeping, you know, narration, but how do I activate it and charge it with, and like put a timer on it and raise the stakes a little bit so that it can be this completed thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's exciting. So
Yeah.
the also talk a little bit about another program really that you well, this is a actual program that you got started at Juilliard, the exchange program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So after the election, I think all of us, as like devastated as we, so this was 2016, my first year of school.
Okay. All right.
As like we were just so devastated,
Yeah.
and as an artistic institution, we also recognized, as like awful as these 4 years are going to be with this presidency, it also is going to be perhaps the greatest time for artists, because we have like a lot of things to say about this, and we have
True.
a lot of like, it
Facts.
just
Yes.
activated us in a way of like, oh, I have something to say about that. And so a lot of us, we explored ways that we could combine our activism with our artistry. And one of the first things I like wanted to touch base with, I think, like coming from Kentucky and then seeing how many or like how red Kentucky was when they voted, a lot of people would turn to me and be like, who did you, oh, you come from Kentucky, so you probably know. And then I was like, that's just not fair, because I know a lot of like the activists who work the hardest, like the communities of color in like rural Kentucky and these like coal mining towns, these families that have been there forever. I'm like, I know how hard those activists work. And like, just because, you're reading these articles that were written by urban folks about those rural areas, I was like, but I don't think they're crediting the amount, like those little specks of blue and all of those like activist communities who like tried really hard to, and had these like very difficult conversations with their communities. And so I was curious about those people, and then I got together with two of my classmates in my drama class, and then an opera singer at the school who had done work with environmentalists and activists in Appalachia and in a lot of the regions, I like just outside of Huntington, West Virginia, and in Eastern Kentucky. And so we all got together and we were like, we want to investigate the conversation between the urban rural divide, and like, why do we write off all like assume all rural people voted for Trump when like that's not the case. or why do rural people like see urbanites as like, you know, sucking up all opportunity, or like what are these stereotypes we have for or against each other, and how does it divide us politically? How can art kind of bring us back together, or like at least get us in a space where we can have a working conversation, um, that's, you know, that's coming from a place of empathy. And my biggest thing during that time was when, like, you know, when I was exposed to someone who like said, I voted for, or if I was talking to this person and if they admitted to voting for Trump, or if they started talking about like make America great again, how my impulse was to be like, no, no, and like wanting to just erupt because of how like violent those kind of statements are. Like, how do you control that impulse and like actually have a conversation? Like, well, why did you vote for him? What did you see in his policy? Like, why? What is your experience? What are your hardships that like you would turn to, um, just, you know, a monster like that and expect him to be our nation's leader? And so like just trying to work with, you know, there was a lot of impulse to be of like cancel culture and like I can't engage. And as much as I participated in that cancel culture, this project was an excellent lesson in like, you know, sit in that discomfort and how can we create like change out of this, or how can we break this down and like really observe where we're going wrong here, or where we're just like, you know. But it was writing off rural people as like those stereotypes when I was like, I grew up around the strongest activists I know were from Eastern Kentucky. Um and so we went down to that first year of school, we all four went down to Whitesburg, Kentucky, and we got a grant from Juilliard, to do this work. And then, you know, when you're working with a small community like that and you are the outsider and you came from a lot of privilege, like we were four Juilliard students coming from New York City.
Yeah.
We got a grant to come down here. How do you work with that privilege? And it's just like white privilege. Like, how do I acknowledge that I have this privilege um, and then use it to lift up people of less privileged, people in a less privileged position, instead of like separating myself or like allowing that to make me feel guilty. It's like acknowledge it, and then like I was saying at school, it's like acknowledge that thing and then work with it. Like, okay, I recognize like we got all this funding to come down here, but every ounce of that money is going to be for us and for like it's going to be shared,
Yeah.
for the work that we want to create, not the work we want to like do for you. It's like for us to meet in a common space. Um, and so we did like potlucks with the community. We met with this awesome program called AMI, Appalachian Media Institute, and that was like high school age students and older, um, who were like, you know, some of the most like equitable and like charged with like activism people. And you know, they're living in this like very small town in Appalachia, um, and so getting together with them and then creating a piece about the urban rural divide, um, and I think the one of their main concerns with like us, even us coming down there, was like, you know, people are fascinated by Appalachia. They want to come and they want to tell our story for us. They want to come and like paint us as something that maybe we aren't.
Yeah.
And you know, they're not document documentaries aren't going down there to like not always going down there to document like all the activism that's happening there. They might be going down to like, heighten the poverty and like, oh, look, that's why all of them believe this politically, when it's like, no, not all people, yeah, they come from hardship, but they didn't vote for Trump. Actually, they're like really fighting um, against him. And so it was just really, and then, coming from, yeah, like I said, coming from the privilege we have, there was also this thing of like the hero complex, like acknowledging there's this thing when I have a lot of privilege, like having gotten out of Kentucky and having gotten to like have a college experience out of that state, and then coming back to that state to do artistic and political work. Like, how do you not fall into this hero complex where you're like, I'm here to help your community, to like, I'm here to share what I've learned. It's like, no, no. How do you come and like just like acknowledging the experience you've had, but like meeting truly in the middle and coming in with an open heart and understanding that they, even though I came from Huntington, they see Huntington as like this huge sprawling urban place full of a lot of privilege. Um, and so it was this extremely humbling and informative time. And I think, we were rolling with it and certainly wanted to continue. But we just couldn't get any more funding from the school. And it's difficult organizing something of that and we really wanted to get the AMI students we were working with to come up to Juilliard and like do a show together in our space. But funding that is incredibly difficult. And,
Yeah.
We're balancing being students on top of like writing.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and here I am like making excuses for like why we didn't see this thing through. And I wish it was just such an important and very relevant to who I am is, that urban rural.
Yeah.
Like I've always felt teetering between those two worlds my whole life. And so it was personal.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
we just had this amazing community. But we put all the money that we had left over kind of in the wake of this time last year of the civil rights movement happening in America, and listening to Black people and raising them. We donated all of the money we had left over to different groups. We donated to Black Lives Matter Louisville, and then a few more organizations by and for Black people in Appalachia. And so it feels like it had this, even if that group, even if we get together or create something similar in the next few years, I know that all of that we've planted seeds and like we've put our mission into organizations that are like doing the work right now and that are activated now more than ever.
Yeah.
So I feel confident that mission is moving forward.
Absolutely. And congratulations, Emma. That's amazing. That whole program and that y'all did that even as a freshman, for real. That's awesome. And it seems like the goal was really just to be as, I guess you could say, down to earth as possible and like really actually understand, why these people are who they are and what makes them. And that's amazing. Seriously, especially as a freshman in college, that's really awesome. Yeah. And, again, stuff like you were saying, it's a lot. That's a lot. And, so don't feel like it was an excuse that y'all stopped, because that's amazing. Like you said, you planted seeds like that. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And we all still stay in touch with each other.
Well, good. Yeah, for sure. So so you've done a lot in the past 8 years of your life from beginning of high school, well, your whole life, but for me, I can say from like when I first got to high school until like now, really just these 8-9 years have been just so much of really just like creativity and art and music and, things like that. And now you're living in New York. You've done so much. You've got all of this experience, and what's the next move? What you got going on? What's your plans?
So, it's
Same.
It's like that dinner table conversation of like, what are you gonna do now, Emma? And you're like, well, there's, like we were talking about, there's like there's 50% of me and the work I want to do. I have to sort of wait for it to come to me, and that's like the world of TV, film. You have to wait to get those auditions, and then you pour your all into it, and then it goes to a lot of different tables, a lot of different opinions, and it's out of your control. Like, you control your self-tape, but then you have to let it go just as easily as you like took it on.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the unexpected parts of my career that, like, you bank on, and something's gonna work out eventually, like, or you're in process with something, but then it doesn't come out. It's not aired for another year. And so there's always that happening. And then the other half is like we were talking about, like, well, I can't just sit around and wait for that part of my art to happen. What about, like, the part of me that loves to do devised work, or that loves to improv with my musician friends? Like, we would, at Juilliard, I had a lot of friends in the music departments or in jazz, and even in classical music, who, we got on well as friends. And then we were like, hey, during your lunch break, do you want to book out a practice room, and like, you can rip on the piano and I'll do some monologues, and we can just like
That's
improv.
cool.
There was I loved, exploring that muscle at school. And that's a huge passion of mine, is that kind of collaboration. And something you had to work hard to create at Juilliard, because it feels, when I first came to that school, it often you felt very divided from the dancers and from the musicians, because you're in this monastic study of like your thing. So yeah, I love that. And sometimes those opportunities come through, or like things with my friend created this group called Promptus, which is exactly that. It's like this improvisational group of composers, dancers, actors, writers, and musicians. And when events were happening, like throughout the past 3 years, we would like get together. We'd like book out a WeWork studio or something, or some kind of performance space, and then we'd create these like improvisational shows. And so hopefully that will kind of will pick up in a little bit. And then there's like virtual readings and those kind of things. But I think so for the parts, it's same for you. It's like there's parts of our careers that like we can dream about and we can sort of predict, and then there's other parts that's like, I have no idea. And I will say yes when it comes, and I will like put my all into it. But what I know is that I want to be an actor, and the 4 years at Juilliard proved to me that I am capable, and I feel well equipped, and I feel like my creative process is clear and defined. And my only thing is I just don't want to be pigeonholed into one performative aspect. Like I don't just, my dream career would be like, do reinvigorate the urban rural artist exchange, and like have, do devised work that combines my love for politics and activism and community organizing. And then, a month after that, go do an indie film that shoots in Hawaii, I don't know, and then the next month do a reading for an off-Broadway thing, and then, you know, the next month do an improv show with like my friends, and just never being tied down to one medium.
Yeah.
Um, and then all the while holding myself accountable to like read the books that I have on my never-ending list of books I want to read, and finishing the sketch and painting it and sending this manuscript somewhere and
Yeah,
seeing
it's like
through like
yeah, exactly. It's like
yeah.
even like you were saying, like reading books that you want to read, other various aspects of just enjoying life. You know, just because I've been reading more too, trying to read more books,
Yeah.
and you know things along that line. But it's all, you know, just go with the flow, I guess. Especially in this era with, but COVID, apparently COVID is getting under control. I don't know in New York if it's like any better. Is it? I would assume it's a little better, like
Yeah,
COVID in
I mean,
general.
we like my boyfriend and I are both fully vaccinated. A lot of our friends are vaccinated. Like the vaccines feel super accessible.
Yeah.
And that it seems like hospitals are doing this thing where if um if they have extras, even if you aren't eligible right now, they're just like,
Uh oh. All right, let's get her back. Yo, you
there
good?
you are. Oh, my
Sorry. Yeah,
FaceTime failed.
that's all right. But what were you saying about the vaccines and stuff?
um, just that, like, yeah, they feel super accessible, and testing is always at the ready. Like, there's a place just one block down where I can go and get a no swab. And then outdoor things are, you know, spring is finally here and it's warmer and people are outside and out in the parks, and so it feels like the city is really coming to life again and warming up in like a safe way.
Awesome.
And then yeah, and then Broadway is, I think they're projecting to open things back up in like September, and you get a lot of hope because then you look at like they're going to do the Music Man on Broadway, and you look up like tickets, and there are it looks, you know, at least online there are dates where a performance is supposed to happen, and
Yeah, that's got to be
like,
exciting.
so it's great.
Well, good. Yeah, I just was just curious about what it's like now in New York. But awesome, man, Emma. Great story, great discussions. It has been great having you on here,
Hey,
and
ditto.
it's great to see you and hear from you, and you tell your story for real. It's really awesome. But before you go, I want to get you in the man. That fire engine's going crazy.
Oh yeah, that's mine. Yeah, welcome to New
You're
York.
biting. So yeah, so are you like you got like an apartment in like downtown New York or something, or what's it?
I'm in South Harlem, so I'm
Oh,
right above Central Park.
nice. I
Yeah.
bet that's cool. I bet that's little is that expensive?
No, actually.
Really? Well, that's
It's
good.
well, I mean, it's expensive when I'm talking to my friends who like live in Bowling Green, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm paying $300 for a full house like every month. I'm just
Yeah.
renting it." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just gonna go cry real quick." But yeah, for right now, for what it is, and like for what we have in this space, it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, so okay, anyways, I'm gonna get you in the Lush lockdown, Emma. All right, so I'm gonna
Hey,
ask you a couple questions,
okay,
totally totally opinion based about Louisville, and I just want you to always curious about what you have to what people have to
yeah,
say. All right, so you're in Louisville, Emma. You have $10. Where are you going to eat? You got 9 seconds.
Spinelli's. Spinelli.
Spinelli's. Okay,
You know
okay, okay.
Spinelli's?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't been there in a long time, but they give you like the huge slices of pizza.
it's awesome. I never liked pizza until I had to go to Spinelli's for like dinner breaks at Walden, and became obsessed. And just like the culture, like the punk music shows that would happen there, and the like naked
Yeah,
man on the wall, like it was just always a
yeah.
fun time.
It's definitely like a funky environment.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Good answer, good answer. Okay, second question. Best, the best venue in Louisville to see a show? You got 9 seconds.
Oh, Palace Theater.
Okay, see, that's what I was thinking. A lot of people will say that, or like, the Mercury Ballroom. But I think Mercury Ballroom is more for like music performances. I've never been to the Mercury Ballroom, but why do you like the Palace? Whoops. Why do you like the Palace so much?
It's just like, it's that old world like stuff. When you go, you're like, I'm about to be transported somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just so like old school and lovely. I think I saw Ben Sollee there, and I saw Ed Sheeran there when I was like a big One Direction fan, and they were always hyping up Ed Sheeran. And it was just a lovely like acoustic concert. And probably some more things there that I can't remember, but I just always feel like transported there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that is definitely a cool. I've been there twice, I think, to see a couple of shows. Super cool setting, and like the big pillars and stuff like that. It's like a nice, super cool place. All right. Last question, Emma. Best park in Louisville. You got 9 seconds. There's a lot. 3,
Tom Sawyer,
2,
which is a really random answer.
Okay. Yeah.
But Tom Sawyer has like these. It was like the first park that I went to in Louisville, I remember, and like there's like the main loop, and like everyone does that loop, but I would always run in. There's like a little forest area, and like I'd see deer. I would see turkey. I saw a wild dog once, like almost got chased down, like just exciting. It felt like being out in like rustic nature, even though it's like a 30-minute drive outside of downtown.
Yeah. Tom Sawyer is not far from where my parents live.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't spend too much time out there. I went there some, but the parks that I went to, I don't even know. I guess like I spent a good amount of time at Cherokee the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Seneca probably. Seneca Park over in St. Matthews, but
yes.
Yeah, I never spent too much time at Tom Sawyer, but it is a very big park. A lot of cool trails and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd go to Seneca for like night runs because
they have that huge
and they have the lights, and then you can cross over to Cherokee on like the bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
So for cross country practice, I remember doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Emma, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and being part of Lush Louisville, episode 27. It's been amazing to have you and hearing your story and your growing as an artist from when you were in your imaginary worlds to when you're graduated Juilliard living in New York. It's amazing. And I've had a couple people text me already, and they were saying that I love her story. So that's
awesome.
Yeah, so I really appreciate you coming on here. And any final thoughts, closing comments?
No, I think like talking on here, thank you so much for having me. Like, I think what you're doing for like young artists in Louisville, like this is just essential. It's like highlighting us and our stories, because we're just all over the world. Like,
yeah, everybody's in different places now from when we knew each other in high school.
And that we just wouldn't, Louisville is such a special and changing artistic community. And I think it's like taught all of us to be to cultivate like the artists we are today. And yeah, how wonderful that city is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where can we connect with you? I've got your Instagram pulled up here. It's just Emma Pfitz. Is that you use Instagram a lot? It looks like it.
Yeah, probably Instagram. I try to do my stay off of it until Saturday, but
I feel
like social media Saturday.
Yeah. Social Saturdays.
That stuff, it can become like a,
Yeah, I actually delete my Instagram every now, like more frequently now, because it's just like I'm done with this for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it can be a
Feel
bad
your
habit.
brain cells.
Exactly. Just sit there scrolling is like, nah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but probably that, and then I'm on Facebook, but I probably use Instagram. I
more.
probably hop on there more.
What's your Facebook? Is it just Emma Pfitzer Price?
Yeah.
Emma, okay.
Yeah. Two
And
last names.
Yeah, and there's a P. There's a P before the F in Pfitzer Price.
Yeah.
If y'all can't see that,
Pop Pfitzer.
Yeah, Pfitzer. There you go. Well, Emma, again, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
yeah, just tell your friends about this, and you know, I'll send you the video. The video will be available shortly on the YouTube channel. The link that I sent you, and yeah, keep doing your thing and stay in touch. It's really good to hear from you and get your story. I'm glad we can make this work.
Yes. Go forth and make great art.
Yes, go forth and make great art. Shout out to GSA.
Yeah.
So, all right, Emma. Well, you be safe. Have a great rest of your Saturday on the beautiful in the beautiful sun that I am not getting to experience. It's currently still thundering here, so shaking my head.
Dance in the rain.
The day. It's still a great day. I'm gonna go dance in the rain. All right, Emma. You be safe. Okay. Great to see you.
Too.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Man. Great episode. Always good to have Emma or talk to Emma. Super inspiring. Great to see her. Let's yeah. So again, I'm gonna have this episode available shortly. I'm gonna do a little editing on it. It'll be available tonight. But again, yeah, follow Emma. Stay in touch with her. She's obviously doing a lot. Got a lot of things going on, and yeah. That's all I've got for this week. Episode 28, I'll be gone. I'll be in Florida next Saturday, so next week we're not doing the podcast. I'll be back the week of the April 10th will be episode 28. And yeah, I got a couple cool guests to wrap up the last 3 weeks of Lush Louisville season 3. So stay in touch with me for that. I'm gonna get this email list thing figured out, and yeah, just stay up to date with me on my Instagram. And yeah, appreciate everybody tuning in too. Lush Louisville.
Yes, sir.